But as I came into Australia as a migrant, obviously I had to almost start again. So it doesn't matter if I was a team lead or a manager back in India. When I came here, I had to start again as a developer. But I think I've been very lucky that I got some really good people who supported me throughout my journey.
Welcome to the Perth Dialogues.
Thank you. Thanks, Nirmal. Thank you for having me.
I've been following you for some time because I came through your LinkedIn profile initially. And I was working in some areas on data and AI, and someone said, "Do you know Harpreet ji?" And that's when I found your profile, and I thought, this is the place where I have to bring him on the podcast, because if someone has reached that position to which we all aspire for, what can we learn from him? How can I maybe be mentored and replicate his success? And maybe everyone else can learn from that success. So thank you for giving your time.
Welcome, Nirmal. I think it's a privilege to be on this podcast. Thank you for having me.
So, because we are talking about your migrant journey, would you like to tell people where you are currently, what your role is, and then where you started from, so we can get a glimpse of where you started and where you are today, and then we can go from there.
So for now, I'm working in a university in Perth. It's a public university where my role is as a chief data officer. I manage all their enterprise level data analytics, data governance, data quality. I also look after all the data architecture and even all the automation that is all based on the data and AI. So there's also the component of AI within my portfolio. So it's a quite interesting portfolio, something that you really brings you out of the bed every day because there are so many interesting things to do. But from where I started, I think it's a very interesting journey. I used to be a developer, a web developer, or before web developer, I used to be the application developer. Like I used to love all these business applications. I started by developing the payroll applications or accounting applications, and from there I moved into the website development. But as I came into Australia as a migrant, obviously I had to almost start again. So it doesn't matter if I was a team lead or a manager back in India. When I came here, I had to start again as a developer. But I think I've been very lucky that I got some really good people who supported me throughout my journey, whether I was a developer or as I kept progressing through the journey. I was very, very lucky to get some really good mentors, some really good managers, team leads who helped me to go through this journey. But coming back to that role of being a developer, and as I was web developer, I really loved that whole thing about developing different things through the internet, whether it was B2B, B2C, which was a very big thing. You think about 20 years ago, they were really big things. Even in Australia, they were still very much new. So I loved developing all those things. But as the time went on, the technology started to become really complicated in that space because the web sort of like the technologies blasted to the next level and the things were almost changing every day. And at that point, I really had to take a step back and think that what do I enjoy in this whole thing? And I could figure out that my passion was always in the data. The databases, at least at that time, were far more stable. That technology wasn't something that was changing 20 years ago a lot. So I sort of like stepped back and I said, okay, I really want to do things in the data world. And I found a job which wasn't like a really that I tried hard to get that one. Like I was actually interviewed again as a developer, and they wanted me to come and do something in the development world. But by the time I joined, like from my offer letter to the point I joined, there was a difference of 1 month. And within that 1 month, this company had someone who had left the job, who was doing something for their client in the data world. So they said, "Oh, we have got this role. Do you want to do this?" I said, "Yep, that's fine. I'm happy to try it. And this is something my passion anyway. I really want to grow in this data space." So that's where sort of like in around 2006, which was almost like which was around 2007. That was almost, I was here in Australia for 4 years, and I used to do web development before it. That's where I got into the data space. And that's from where my journey started. And slowly from developing the small data capabilities, applications, I started to learn more and more about the data side of things. But my passion was always more on the, along with the data, my passion was on the business side, that how does business use data? Why do we develop these things? Why do we actually design all these capabilities? And I was very lucky to then have worked with some really amazing business people who helped me learn that why do we do these things? Why are we developing this thing? How does this data capability help us to save money or increase revenue or help us to do better stakeholder management or capital utilization? So this is where I started to learn, oh, this is why data is very important. So the more I learned about the business, the more I could actually start to learn the broader aspects of the data and how we can start to use data for improving decision making across the whole organization. So that's how my journey kept going on and on. And then I was very lucky that, finally I reached this role of being a chief data officer, leading the whole enterprise at that level.
So you said you were already doing good things in India and you wanted to move to Australia. What actually made you to make that decision? Like, was it a planned move, or was it is something clicked and you thought, okay, I'm going to Australia?
It was a combination of quite a few things. One thing, I really loved all this space of development and doing all this application development, but I'm not an engineer by profession. So one thing I realized in India, that if I had to progress any further, I had to be an engineer, or MCA, which is a Master of Computer Application. So I did have a diploma in computer, but I never had a formal degree, which was about, which in India, I think in those days, a formal degree meant that you have done Bachelor of Technology, BTech as an engineer, or at least an MCA as a Master of Computing Applications. So that's where I realized that, okay, there's no further growth for me as a developer, at least in those times. I'm talking 23, 25 years ago, when IT was still coming up, and then I think they had enough people who were qualified engineers to do the jobs in those days. So that was one thing. But along with that, we were 5 friends who came together. So we all used to work in an IT company. So we started to think, okay, what do we want to do next? One said, oh, we should go to Australia. Then the second, third, fourth, fifth, we all made the plan together. So there were some reasons, but I think at the end of the day, as we say, the nature had to make a reason for us to come, which I think the bigger reason was that, yes, we were 5 friends together, we applied together, we got the visas, and we came to Australia.
So for most people who come to any new country, the first 1 or 2 years are the toughest. How was your first year in Australia?
I think in some sense, I feel very lucky because 3 of us out of the 5, 3 of us came to Melbourne, and we stayed together, which made our journey really enjoyable and much more smoother than anyone else who is coming to Australia as a student, because we knew each other from day one. We were looking after each other, so we knew that we have to survive together. We are into this thing all together. That was one part. At least socially, we didn't feel, yes, there was always this little bit of feeling of homesickness, but given that we were all 3 together, we were into it together, so there was less of that feeling of being homesick. So even if when we will feel homesick, at least we had someone to talk to. So from that social aspect, I think we were very lucky that we had someone to take care of us or each other from day one. The other good thing, I think, that is very amazing thing within the Sikh community is that we have this concept of temple or Gurdwara, as we say. So we went to the Gurdwara on the second week when we were in Australia. We got to meet some really amazing people whom I would call as God sent people. and one of those guys, he just, he saw 3 of us together, and he was like, oh, you all seem very new to the country. And in those days, like in Melbourne, yes, we used to have students, but not as many as we see now. So, he could actually really identify 3 of us as being very new to the country. He said, okay, I'll drop you back home. You see, because we were lost, we didn't know how to use public transport to go to the Gurdwara, and we didn't know how to go back to home. And he could just look into our faces and feel that we were a bit lost. And then from there, we got very close to him, and he started to help us on a lot of things that you will generally struggle as a new sort of the migrant or a student in this country. And three, I think the other part, which was obviously the study. I was very lucky to have some really good friends in the university, and we were all into the study together. We used to do a lot of study together. We all were very passionate about doing something in the space of IT. So there was a lot of collaboration between all of us. There was one guy who got into the IT job even as a student, and then he helped me to get into that similar company. Even when I was a student, I was very lucky. When generally people will be doing a lot of odd jobs, so I was very lucky to get a IT job as a part-time, because I could only work part-time as a student. But I was very lucky to get a job where I could actually go and use my skills as a developer, and that's where I think I would have learned the most. That's where I developed all the B2B and B2C websites being a student, which was, I think I was very fortunate to do that.
So you moved from India to Melbourne, and then there is a second migration from Melbourne to one of the most remotest cities in world, Perth. How did that happen?
Oh, in between there was another one, Canberra.
Ah,
So, so a lot of people will know me as a Harpreet Singh Canberra, because at least in Perth, because Harpreet is a very common name, and I think that's a very common way to distinguish from where did you come. So I came to Perth from Canberra. I moved from Melbourne to Canberra as part of my job. I was interviewed with one of the big consulting companies, and they offered me a role in Canberra. That's how I moved into Canberra. And then I went into another consulting company within Canberra, and they had a project here in Perth. So then they asked me to move to Perth, and because in those days, I'm talking back in 2008, I think we didn't have a lot many data people here in Perth. So there was a very big project that they wanted to do. They brought myself from Canberra, and then they brought two other people from Melbourne. So three of us came together into Perth. But yes, it is an isolated city. We had a very young kid. She was only 3 months, I think, when we came to Perth, 3 or 4 months, my elder one. And it's a very, very isolated city. In those days, we didn't have a lot of community. And we did struggle initially because, especially living in Canberra, Canberra is very ideally located geographically. One, it's a very small town. Socializing becomes very, very easy in Canberra. So even after coming back from work, it hardly takes 15-20 minutes, or at least in those days, it used to take only 15-20 minutes to come back from the office. You still have enough time to go and socialize with anyone in the evening. But even otherwise, the location of Canberra is so close to Sydney. So it was very easy for us to go to Sydney and catch up with our friends over the weekend. But yes, coming here into Perth was quite a big challenge. I think it took us a lot many years to adjust to this isolation, and really come to the sort of the acknowledge the reality that this is what it is. But obviously over the time, the community has grown so much, and our own connections obviously start to grow over time. So I don't think there's any sense of that isolation anymore. But yes, it was a big challenge initially.
so I was going through your LinkedIn profile and I saw that you moved from a few consultancy jobs and then to the university that where are you working at. But you've been here at the university for so long. How did you achieve that long tenure where people usually like don't stay in a job for more than a year or two?
I think I will give the credit to the leadership in the university. It's not that I didn't have this thought of leaving the job, because especially coming from the consulting world, um, it was a bit of a, you're almost changing the gears. It's not that there's something wrong in the culture, but it's different. The consulting culture is very different. You're always, from one project to another project to another project. You're working with different set of people all the time. So there is a different type of learning. When you're within the sector, it's a different type of learning. It's a bit slow, but you're working with the same people all the time, which obviously brings its own challenges, but it also brings its own benefits, because if you can work with all the people in a very cohesive way, then that journey becomes much more easier. The other challenge that I had was in consulting, you're always doing projects, and then one after another project, but you're never doing support. Whereas when I was in the university, then I have to actually also start to learn, oh, now whatever I make, I have to also support it. So it's not that like I will make a TV and sell it and someone else is going to fix it. Now, if I make a product, I have to fix it too. So it was a bit of a learning curve for a few years. There was this thought that came to me a few times, and that I need to go and do something different. But the leaders in the university were quite amazing. That's something I can say very proudly in the university culture, that they work with the very different values in a way that they're very human centric. Most of the universities in Australia, I always say, they are more like a community. They're not like an organization. Yes, they have to run like an organization. There's a profit and loss and balance sheet that goes along. But there's a very strong sense of community, because we are also, yes, we are staff on the one end, but then we are dealing with the students on the other side. And any university, even the smaller unis, will have like 30,000, 40,000 students. So it's a massive community that we develop as part of the organization. So that makes the job far more enjoyable. And you can also start to see the benefits that the university gives to the community, because we are directly enabling lots and lots of things within the economy and helping people, serve the community by becoming doctors, engineers, teachers, and whatnot. Yes, I think that they are the sort of things that kept me motivated, along with the leadership and the sense of community and this sector, because it works very much. It lives the values it sort of says on the website. Whatever they are saying, that's a value they live with. That made me keep going on and on with this university for 15 years now.
You work as a chief data officer. How do you explain the difference of where the data sits and where the AI sits, or are the same thing?
Just very interesting, that we started with what we used to call as the decision support systems back in 1990s and 2000. That's what we used to call them. And then we started to call them as the data, or we used to start to call them as business intelligence. At the end of the day, whatever we will see, the common thing that we had within all these systems was the decision and the intelligence. And the decision only becomes intelligent when we have enough information and good data. It's just that how we are starting to use the technology to make the decision has been changing, but the fundamental doesn't change. For example, even as a human, how would I start to make decisions in my life? The simplest example I give is that when I have to teach my kid how to cross a road, I will tell them, look left, look right, look left. I will give them the information. And few times during their early childhood, I will hold their finger and help them cross the road. Once that information starts to become their own knowledge and their own wisdom, I could be sitting in a totally different country. I'm now least bothered, because I know, I'm confident that my kid will be crossing the road very cautiously. At the end of the day, it's information and data. At some point, we were calling it as business intelligence, and we are making business very intelligent using structured data. Now, in the world of AI, it's still the same data, but I think the AI has just changed it's a paradigm shift in a way that because AI can consume both the structured and unstructured data, but the fundamentals stay the same. The decision is the same. I'm just helping to improve the decision. So that's why I don't see the data or BI or AI as any different. It's, if we are focused on the data, if we can make our data really good, it's of high quality that we can rely on, then whether I'm doing the business intelligence or whether I'm doing the artificial intelligence, at the end of the day, I'm making the organization much more smarter and intelligent in comparison to yesterday. That's all we're doing.
You said about teaching your kid. You, as a chief data officer, you have to teach people at large scale university on how to start using data, or before using data, you have to collect that data somehow. How do you get your message across that this is the new way of doing things and we have to be collecting all that data through all that touch points before we can start making decisions based on that?
The universities are quite mature in that sense. We are one of the most highly regulated sectors, because there are a lot of funding implications. Every domestic student gets funded by the government. which means that we have to collect a lot of data and we have to supply a lot of data to the government. So there's already a lot of that happening that we are not aware, but there's a lot of data that we collect as a university. Now, obviously, there's a lot many domains within the university. We are doing research, we are doing teaching and learning. Then obviously there are the normal operations like finance, and we are managing the HR side of things, the payroll. So a lot of that is obviously happening. There's a lot of systems. The complexity of the unis is far more than what we can actually anticipate from the outer world. They're really, really complicated organizations, which means that the systems and the data has to be collected. I think the cultural shift that is coming in the recent times is that we need to maintain the quality of the data. So the data was always being collected, at least for the last 30 years. I think the unis have been collecting a lot of data. The first challenge was the data governance and data quality, which I think the sector has actually come along that journey a lot, because now they understand that there's a lot of funding implications if you don't collect it correct, if you don't submit to the government on time. I don't know if you know that most of the data from the unis is actually submitted to the government in real time. That's how sophisticated it is. So our data governance and quality has to be really, really good, at least for the data that we are submitting to the government. But what is happening to change or starting to change is that now unis are becoming far more sophisticated in terms of what they collect, because now they're understanding that, if you have to make a decision about these things, then we need to start to collect more information. The frequency has to improve, our communication has to improve, and that's an ongoing journey. So yes, it's been a lot of work that my team has done in the last 15 years that has helped to create that culture of data-driven decision making, and there's been a lot of improvements in what we collect, how we collect, and there are a lot of projects now. At any point in time, there are tons of projects going on, and what more data we can collect, what more systems we can implement, how can we start to use the analytics in a better way. So it's a cultural shift which doesn't come overnight, and I think that's what I really enjoy as part of this job for the last 15 years, is that we are on this continuous evolution of doing something new, creating new culture, creating new data sets, creating new decisions, and helping new decisions to be far more effective.
These days, there's a very big push towards privacy of my data. And you are in that role where you have to collect as much data as you can. How do you or anyone makes that balance between how much data you can collect and you have a need for data, but how much there's a limitation of that pull and push? How do you manage that aspect?
So there's not some, but a lot of legal aspects to it. So one, we have to collect a lot of data which is legally mandated. So that has to be collected, because otherwise we cannot make our operations efficient, whether it's about teaching and learning, submitting data to the government, in dealing on the financial side of things, or a lot of other like payroll things, research, whatever research we do, whatever sort of the outputs our researchers generate, we have to collect that data, we have to store it in an effective way. But obviously with the use of technology, as we have discussed, we can now process far more data, which means that we can also collect a lot more data. But then there are all these legal guardrails in place, especially in WA where we are. We have an act called PRIS, which is all about the privacy and responsible information sharing. So that actually, all the public universities in WA are covered under it. So whatever we are collecting, it has to be a very reasonable reason of why we are collecting. What can we do with it? So there has to be again, I'm not a legal expert, but yes, because I have to deal with some of these things as part of my role. There are all these concepts of the collection notices that we have to design to say that why are we collecting your information, what we may use your information for. So in that sense, we are nothing different to any other public sector organization. We have to be very open, transparent on these sort of things. There are also now, as part of these regulations, they're also looking into that. How do we sort of start to regulate the automated decision making, in terms of like when I'm using the data to automate some of the decision making, it may then actually impact the end stakeholder, because the machines may take the decision A or the B way, which may not be in the best interest of the stakeholder. And we are all aware of these sort of the use cases like Robodebt, the thing that one of the initiatives by the federal government that we had with the automation and what sort of challenges it created for the citizens of Australia. So for that reason, there are a lot of regulations now in place within WA and federally. So we have to play within all those boundaries of how much we collect, what do we do with it. But yes, there are legal people within the organization who guide us on what we can do, what we can't do. My role is to actually enable that policies at the data level and make sure that whatever platforms we are developing to help people make the decision, they are all ticking the boxes from the privacy and the legal perspective. But it's the legal people who help us and guide us in that whole domain.
You also talked about introducing that AI capability on top of what you have already been collecting and analyzing and visualizing. Is it actually getting you outcomes, or is it more of a hype that it will fizzle out in a few years?
I think that's the thing, irrespective of AI, Nirmal. AI is nothing in that sense. It's just another technology. When the whole analytics came, people thought it's a hype, it's too expensive to implement. And obviously, any new technology is always very expensive to implement. Nothing is going to be cheap because you're almost dealing with the cutting edge thing. It's going to be expensive because someone has invested a lot of money in developing those things. So if they're going to give you the license to use it, the licensing and everything is going to be far more expensive. But at the same time, yes, we acknowledge the AI brings the challenges to a bit of next level. It is far more expensive than others, and then it had some different type of challenges that normally a technology won't have, like the hallucination, or there are issues with the privacy, or they may use our data to train their models. So a lot of those things have started to improve, like in the last couple of years. So I'm witnessing that hallucination is becoming much better. The models are becoming really smart in doing those things. A lot of the privacy concerns are now starting to get addressed. All the big vendors are now giving the commitment that our data is not going to be used to train their models. So all this commitment from all the improvements that I'm witnessing, I can feel that yes, it is there to stay. There's a serious intent behind it to improvise it. In terms of value, I think it keeps coming back to the each and every organization. That's where the whole smartness comes in. That what use case do you choose? Where do you start? Do you start with this massive use cases, spend millions, and then obviously it's a risky path. You may or may not get the results. As far as we are concerned, we have been doing quite a few POCs in the last year. We have learned a lot. We took a very, very safe approach. We set that commitment to ourselves that we are not pushing ourselves. We are not going to go into productionizing these things unless we have learned, because cost in the AI is still a very much like a black box. No one knows how much does it cost. So last year we did quite a lot of POCs. This year now we are ready with quite a few of the AI use cases that we are planning to go live in the next few months, which I'm very confident from the initial results we have seen, it is going to give us a lot of benefits. But obviously we are putting a lot of guardrails around it, which makes sure that we are not going to overburn the money. We are going to make sure that we are monitoring the hallucination issues or any other privacy issues that may come along. But we are actually putting a lot of those guardrails that we learned from the lessons of the POCs last year.
So you started on web developments, and then you went into data. Now you're working with cutting edge AI technologies. How do you keep yourself updated on these changing technologies? How do you build your capabilities? You have to be relevant, and you have to leading that whole team, and you have to take the whole team with you. And what can I learn as in my profession to build up my capabilities?
Interesting. The question is very, very interesting. I wish I had some magic wand. I can give it to everyone, a crystal ball. But I think this is something in our culture too. Like I think in culturally that we're designed to be very much entrepreneur. And then one of our teachings itself from our culture is which says the Sahib Mera Neet Nawa, which actually means that the guidance that I'm getting from inside is always very much new. I need to keep learning. That's why we are actually called Sikh. Sikh means that I'm a learner. The literal meaning of the Sikh is a learner. And there are a lot of teachings within our culture which are almost telling me that I have to keep unlearn and learn and unlearn and learn. So that's the sort of the principles I keep following, that I have to learn something, I have to preserve the principles, and then I have to unlearn the waste while preserving the principles, and then learn something new. But if you really focus on the whole journey of technology, the principles have been very much similar. There's a business. Business has got some imperatives around financials. They have got some very tight budgets. They have to work on that. Technology is all about improving the quality of the decisions and how quickly can we make a decision. So the example I give, a very simple example I always give, is in a banking sector or even in a university sector, the decision for the last 40, 50 years, the fundamental decision in both the sectors has been, there's an application, should I approve the application or not? In the bank, it is about the loan. Do I approve the loan application? In universities, it's been about, should I give the admission to this student or not? That's the basic. That decision, yes and no, brings all the money or brings all the risk for you. So there's a sort of balance of risk, and then how much money does it bring in? First, we started with the manual forms. That's what we used to have, a paper-based form, but the decision was still the same, but it was taking weeks and weeks to make the decision because you are going through all this pile of paperwork that was helping us to make the decision. Then we started to bring all the systems like Oracle Financial or ERP systems, but what the decision was still effectively the same. But we started to digitize the whole thing in form of a technology to say that now instead of coming to us, go to this thing, put all your details in, but it was still the human making the decision. But it was still not improving our timeline. It was still taking me those many days to do the decision. Then we came with the concept of business intelligence. That's why we started to call it as the intelligence. It started to show me the trends that if people from this background or this cohort generally apply to us for a loan, or they apply to us in a university, they're generally okay. We can let them go. I don't need to have too much of governance around them. If their income is about this much, or if their educational background is this type of thing, generally in the past, we have let them go. So I don't need, they're very low risk students or very low risk clients for me. So I will let them go. So this is where a level of sort of the time effectiveness started to come in. So efficiency started to improve. My effectiveness started to improve. What is AI doing? AI is actually just taking it to the next level. Now AI is saying that a lot of that decision now machine can help me to make. It is still what we call as a human in the loop. The human is going to be there. It is going to help to verify the decision, validate the decision, but the decision is exactly the same. But what it is going to do, the moment the application comes in, now maybe it can actually process the whole application in minutes. So we started the journey from where we were collecting still same or maybe more information. I think the information that we are collecting has gone a bit more over the time, but the decision is exactly the same. What risk do I have if I approve this application? So these machines are just, so in that sense, if you start to focus on the fundamentals, then your learning automatically starts to evolve. You're not focused on the technology in that sense. You are actually focused on the decision. And then you're focused on that, what is my role in helping the business to make this decision? How do I help them with the use of tech to make this decision faster and far more effective? Like the quality of decision starts to improve. Every time we make a decision, we know it's a good quality decision. So if we focus on that, that's what I do again. For everyone, it could be very different way on how they can learn and unlearn. But my focus is always on what are we trying to achieve. Then the technology is just a way to achieve this. So that's how, or some of the principles that I keep applying in keeping with this whole advancement.
So even when you are moving from data to AI, you still wrote a book on the Data Playbook, which is still grounded in data. It seems you can't let go of data. Why do you think data is so much more important than AI? And what do you want to convey through that book?
AI is just the intelligence, as I say. The intelligence needs the data. So AI is just a way to help us improve the decision making, the quality of the decision, and the time it takes to make a decision. That's what we call as intelligence. Even within humans, is for an intelligent person, he or she still needs the data. They will still need to read a book. They will still need to go through the whole process of schooling or education. And then depending on their learning journey, how quickly can they make the decisions, how quickly can they synthesize the information, then we start to call them, oh, this person is very intelligent because they can think very fast, they can do most of the things in their mind or brain, and they can help us to make the decisions very quickly. So that's what AI is doing. It's a technology that helps me to make the decisions in a far more effective way. But the data is still the fundamental. So the reason why I started the whole concept of the Data Playbook, again, some of this goes back to our culture of where we have this culture of what we call as a seva, which is selfless serving to the community. Obviously, traditionally we had few other ways to do that sort of seva, but I feel that whatever I've learned from the data perspective in the higher education, it was a way for me and then two of my friends. One is in Sydney and one is in Melbourne. So it's a collaborative approach across Australia. We all come from very different backgrounds. One of them is a consultant, and the other one is in the sector itself. But he's in the data space, but he's in a different role in the university. So it was our sort of way to share what we have learned in this space, especially in the higher education. And how do you actually solve some of these things in this sector? And it's been very interesting because still a lot of people come to me and ask me, oh, we've got these challenges about operating model, we've got these challenges about the technology. All I say is, here's the article, go and read it. So it saves a lot of time for me too. But yes, that's why I'm grounded very much in the data, in that sense, that the data is still the fundamental to everything we do in a modern organization.
So let's talk about the data that you have collected in your journey in Australia. It's usually said that the life of migrants or the Australian life for a migrant is not, they don't get a level playing field. And you have been through a lot of consultancy and in Melbourne and in Canberra. What's your experience in, did you get a level playing field or how did you manage that challenge?
I think it's all in my mind, Nirmal, at the end of the day. It's whatever I define as a level playing field is all in my mind. I always say, and this is what I try to do, I can only focus on what can I do. What other people are thinking about me, what other people are not thinking about me is not what I should be focusing upon. Even if I take this, forget about Australia, I can think about India, okay? Where I come from. So the mindset of people doing some politics in the office, or some people getting favor, some people getting judged, some people getting biased, do you think none of that exists there? It will exist there too. It's a human behavior. It's something that I cannot say that this whole thing started to happen just because I came to Australia. Those things will happen there too, but it's all about what do I focus on, and then what do I do with my career. I can even take an example of Australia. This is a very common thing I say to many people, that do you think if there was any discrimination in the office culture, if that existed, did that exist because the migrants started to come to Australia? When it was only the white Australia policy, then there was no bias, then there was no politics. Very hard to believe. So this thing is part of the human behavior. It's my perception of how I perceive the world. If I feel that everyone is working against me, the whole system is against me, I'll start to see it that way. If I start to see that, oh, how amazing this country is, I came from a totally different country. My English skills were very basic when I came, very basic. The way the Australians will work in the office, very different. I didn't know about a lot of these things in a cultural way. They are still giving me an opportunity to work. I still remember when I was doing an IT job, as I said previously, as a student. The owner of that company was very young, very young. He was actually 2 or 3 years younger than me, which was a different cultural thing for me. Like, it's not that, not a negative, but in a way that in India, we are used to having these bosses who are very senior. So we will call them by respect. And he's like, here is my boss, 2 or 3 years younger than me. He's not my boss, he's actually CEO. It was a very small company. He used to sit just next to me. And he knew that I didn't have a car. I was a student. I used to come by bus. And around lunch, because I was a student, I would normally not take my lunch. I didn't have a way to cook the food. I didn't have enough time. He will take his car out during the lunchtime and say, okay, Harpreet, where do you want to go for lunch? Which shopping mall, which food court, which fast food center? And he will take me there. What an amazing thing to do. It's a simple thing. What will it do? Like, it's only a 10-minute thing out of his time every day, whatever days I used to go, because I was a part-time worker, like, and then I sometimes used to go during the evening or early morning. And that was another thing. Like, he had given me the access to the office, the keys of the office. I could go 24/7 anytime. Whenever I had time as a student, he said, you can come and do. That's what I need to start to look into, like how much enablement they're doing for me to make sure that I'm successful in my role. And how much accommodating are they with my very basic levels of English skill, very different learning, sort of the work culture that they are helping me to learn, and all the other positives they're doing for me. Yes, there are always going to be people who will have a different view than me, but I don't think that's a discrimination. That we have that view as a humans anyway. That every human is having, whether I'm in India, whether I even when I'm here working locally in my local community organization, where I'm only dealing with the people of my own background and community, even they will have different views. But I need to understand that that's a normal thing. That's how organizations grow. The organization won't grow if it didn't have different views. But if I'm committed to the values, I'm committed to the Australian values, which is the example I keep giving is the kangaroo and the kiwi on our emblem, where they're always looking forward, moving forward. And that's what our Sikh culture tells us. The saying in our Sikh culture is the Agam Kutarang Piche Phirna Modara, which means Agam means forward looking, and Piche means like we are never going to turn back. We are not never ever going to look back, which is exactly like the Australian values that the kiwi and kangaroo cannot look back. So in that sense, I never felt that there was anything which was very hard for me to come and be part of this working culture, because obviously we bring those values as a Sikh, which are always progressive. But as far as we are positive, as we say, Chadati Kala, we will find the people who are always going to support us. I've got amazing examples of where people have gone out of the way to support me as a worker, genuinely out of the way. And there are people who would have done what they thought was best. I may not have thought that it's the best thing to do, because I may have been self-centric and I may have thought that they should have done this way. But in the long run, I really understood that everyone was working for the betterment of the organization. So that's, I think, as far as we stay positive, I think that makes life much easier.
You referred to, when India, there's a higher boss, you call him by respect, and here it's a different way of doing things. What other unspoken, rules and workplace rules that you have learned over the years in Australia that new migrant professionals should know of, and which can help them in their journey or their success much more if they know it beforehand? They don't have to take 5-10 years to learn.
Yes, no, that's fine. I think this one is the most interesting one, where in India we don't call people by name. I remember in my first semester at the uni, I couldn't ask a single question to my teacher because of that, because here they will all call by the name. And in India, especially with the teacher, will call them with a lot of respect as sir or teacher. Or so it took me 6 months to adjust to that culture where I can actually call someone elder than me by the name. The other thing which was very interesting, when I was in my first formal job as a consultant, like I was doing odd jobs as in IT, but they were not very big or sort of the formal organizations in that sense that they had a whole review process. When I joined a company which had a formal review process, after 6 months, they asked me to do my review. Now, again, culturally, it was an amazing challenge, because we as Sikhs don't believe that I'm doing anything, because that we see as a sign of ego. I'm not saying it's a sign of ego, but that's how we were trained and brought up, that when I'm saying I did X, I did Y, I'm the one who's doing this, like we were told since childhood that we always say we. It's not about I. The word I doesn't exist in the word team. It's all about us. So it was very hard for me to write that review. and I could only, I still have that copy of what I wrote, and I had written like few words about what I've achieved. And as I said, that when I joined that company, I was going to work as a developer. As I said previously, I was going to work as a developer, and they asked me to work as a data person, which I didn't have a lot of exposure to that technology in which they wanted me to work. And when my boss reviewed it, there's a, as part of the formal review, I have to do it, and then they do it. He wrote 2 to 3 pages about me. And his review about me was much higher than what I had put myself as. Like, there's a scale of 5. So I put, I think, maybe myself somewhere in the middle, and he had rated me really high. And I went to him and I said, like, why did you do this? Because I really wanted to learn about this culture, that how do these people work, and what are they thinking? I said, like, I didn't know anything about this technology. I was learning everything about it, and then you guys helped me to learn. I actually believe personally that I could have been far more productive. I don't think I was as productive as I would have been in the other technologies. Why did you rate me so high? His answer was very interesting. He said that a lot of people come to us who don't know this technology. It's okay. Like, people don't know it. It's part of our culture. We have to coach you. We have to teach you. We are a big organization. We don't expect everyone to know everything. But he said, like, one of the things we really liked about you, that if we give you a task, we give you a task on Monday, and if it's a 5-day task, you will just tell us on Monday that I don't know it. I don't know how to do it. and and we'll tell you how to do it. We may spend a day with you, and then you will finish in the next 5 days. He said the biggest challenge we see with the people here who don't know anything, or who don't know this technology or any technology, people are coming as a graduate, or it's not about just the migrants. I think he was talking very generally.
Yeah.
He said that we will give them the task. They will say, oh, yes, we will do in 5 days. And when they know they can't do it, they'll come to us on Thursday or maybe on the Friday morning saying, oh, sorry, I've tried a lot. I don't know how to do it. Can you coach me? And in between, they've wasted 5 days. And especially when you're a consultant, you're working for a client, you're on a chargeable, engagement. It has wasted a lot of money and time. He said, we really like that honesty. That's where I learned about it. I said, like, how important it is in this culture. If someone really wants to learn about this culture, it's about honesty. But honesty with positivity. Honesty is not that, oh, I don't know anything and I don't want to learn. Yes, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. So we have to have that positive mindset too, as we have discussed. So I think that those couple of things, where in this culture where there's no discrimination of who is elder, who is younger, that it's all about the skills we bring onto the table. It's all about the positive mindset. It's all about the honesty. It's all about rational inquiry. As far as I'm not thinking negative, the one thing I've learned here is the communication skill is not what I speak. The communication skill is all about what I think. If I need to start to think positively, and then only I think I'll be successful in this culture. If I'm thinking negatively and trying to be positive in terms of what I speak today or tomorrow, I will get caught. So I need to start to think positively. I need to start to understand why people are doing things differently. It is not about discrimination all the time. It's about they have a different way to deal with things. And if I'm being very polite, humble, and curious in my nature, that I'm genuinely wanting to learn, why wouldn't you do this thing this way? Why would you do things that way? I believe in this culture. A lot of the people I've met, they're really amazing. They will tell you that this is why we do it this way. Now, if you have a way to improve it, I have never come across a scenario where people will not listen to you. But you'll have to come along with on a journey with them to understand why they do it one or the other way. And then once you understand it, then if you have a better way, I think people will come along. But you cannot be very dictatorial. You need to be very collaborative in that sense. And I've never felt that there's a barrier in that sense. In the office culture, people are always about, like, when I say barrier, I don't see that, because I feel I'm looking different. I've got this turban, I've got beard. That has never come as a barrier. As far as I have a skill to contribute to the organization, I feel people genuinely respect it. And that's a lesson for anyone new coming into this country, and especially people from our culture who may visually look different, but it doesn't matter. This look only matters for 2 or 3 or 4 days. After that, what matters is your skill. People will only ask you once or twice, why do you look different? Why do you have this turban? Why do you have the beard? But that discussion starts and ends here, full stop. Now it is all about what do we bring onto the table. So don't live with those negativities. Think positively, be full of life, and try to understand why people do things in certain way, and be very, very honest. I think that's all I can say.
So, like, there's a very big push of reflecting that Australian multiculturalism into the workplace. Every person from every groups should get equal opportunity and participation in the workforce. But there is this also this pull that we have to deliver the outcomes. We have to get working and deliver whatever I'm supposed to be delivering. Those two things, there's merit and then there is equality or equity we are doing. How do we balance these two aspects in a workplace?
I think the first and foremost always stays a skill. That's how I see it. The people, I think one of the best things I like about Australia is that every job has a position description. So at the end of the day, I'm working by the position description. This is a skill that I'm looking for. These are the people, or the people with this skill is what I'm looking for. The way I look at the multicultural aspect is that as a person who is hiring, I cannot be biased towards a certain type of people or the people with a certain background. As far as I'm not biased, automatically the team that I will develop is going to be multicultural and highly skilled, because my focus is on the skill, but I'm not looking at that what country this person comes from, what gender this person comes from, or what sort of ethnicity and whatnot. As far as I'm not looking into that part, so one of the things that I try to follow is that when I'm looking at the CVs, I don't even look at the names. I don't care what the name is. I'm only looking at what skill they bring. And what I've witnessed and experienced over time, that as if you start to do that thing, your team is automatically going to be very diverse. You will have people from all continents, all different backgrounds. I've got people like who are engineers, MBAs, computer science, or totally different backgrounds. Because I'm only focusing on what skill do they bring on board. Because that's again the lesson I learned in my early career, that I couldn't go and work for a company because I didn't have this XYZ educational qualification. So I couldn't do an entry. As far as I'm not really worried about those things, I'm looking at, this is a skill they bring in. This is how they fit into the position description. Yes, there's a qualification side too. That's what we need to look into. But still the primary factor is the skill. And I think automatically then what I'm seeing personally, genuinely, is that people are coming in and actually adjusting into the culture very quickly. If it's a genuinely multicultural environment, and I think I've written an article on LinkedIn on this one too. There's a difference between multicultural and multicolored teams. What we keep doing is we keep developing multicolored teams. Multicultural teams are where I understand the strength they bring from their culture. I'm just giving an example. The example could be like Germans are so amazing in their engineering. They're so good. That's a strength I need to use. The Japanese are also very good in really doing the perfect things. The Indians may be good in actually how do we make these things in a very economical way. So if you want to do some cost cutting, again, I'm just giving an example. I'm not trying to generalize, but it's just an example that if we were trying to understand the strengths of each and every culture that brings in, that actually creates such an amazing systems, the platforms that we develop, because now I'm not enforcing my view of that this is how you need to go and work. They come with the different skill sets, they come with their cultural strengths. And the example I keep giving all the time is the Pele. Pele, when he wanted to do the football or soccer, he came from a background which was sort of like the people who would have lived in the jungles for many years, and they were sort of like they had a lot of these skills what the monkeys will have. They could jump onto the trees, and then I think that's what they call as a Zumba skill. And the Europeans actually came to coach them and said that you cannot play Zumba in soccer. So they actually banned it in Brazil because they couldn't understand what is the strength of being a Brazilian. So they banned it. And when he went, and then he started to follow it, he was coached in that European style of football. But when his team was down in the World Cup, his inner voice couldn't stop to push him to play like a Zumba and not follow that European style of soccer. And he went in, and his team was down by a couple of goals. I cannot remember how much, but they were down. He went in. He didn't care whatever he was taught. He went in and played with his inner instinct. And that's where he actually scored with the bicycle kick. You remember that Pele thing? Like he could actually flip, and that's a Zumba style. And after that, the Europeans had to recognize the Zumba style as a formal soccer style. So this is the power of multicultural. This is where when we start to acknowledge that people of every culture bring something different to the table. And as a leaders, our job is to understand what is that different thing they bring, apart from the technical skills. There are cultural skills too. And that's where I think then you don't have this challenge of teams having this issue of being productive or the projects getting delayed now. I think because everyone wants to perform, but we have to give them a level of comfort in terms of what culture they come from, what strengths they bring in, and as far as they can contribute on those strengths, I think you will be actually amazed on how much time it starts to save in terms of the projects and the quality it brings into the projects.
You shared and you talked about how you're building that kind of a diverse team. If I am joining as a professional to this multicultural, this very diverse team, what is the mindset I should be taking in? That this is how I should be acting, this is how I should be performing. What should I be taking into that team so I can contribute but also learn from that team?
You should be who you are. That's all I can say. The people should feel very natural with obviously within the values of the organization about, generally the organizations will have the values about the personal excellence, the rational inquiry or courage or respect. Generally, I think in Australia, broadly, you will see there are 6 or 7 words within which organizations may pick up 3 or 4 or whatnot. So they're the organizational values. That's what we need to live by. But within that, I need to be very natural. As far as I'm not disrespecting anyone, I'm not being I'm not sort of belittling anyone, but I should be given a very free environment where I can contribute on the designs and how I think we can solve this problem. Sometimes when I look at kids, they can actually look at the same problem and they can solve the problem in 10 times better than us because we are being conditioned to only look at the problems in one way. So this is where I think this diversity comes into play, that don't tell them the solution. Talk to them about the problem, that this is what we're trying to solve, and let people do what they want to do in terms of whiteboarding, in terms of putting the design together. And then we can have a healthy discussion to say, oh, someone has put this part of the design as really good. Someone's put this part of the design to be very good. Okay, now how can we actually bring all of this together to actually create a far more scalable, robust, economical solution for the business? So that's what I would suggest. We don't need to be acting. We need to be honest. We need to be who we are. And I think as we start to do that, it becomes very comfortable for any new person to come in and be part of the team.
You also talked about, like, when there was a boss who used to take you in his car to somewhere for your support. There was other person who gave you a higher ranking in your assessment. So you've also written about having good mentors on LinkedIn. What kind of mentors I should be looking on to progress in my career, and then how should I go and find them?
I think it depends. Again, I never looked at the mentors. I got them, and that's why I keep saying that I've been very lucky that I got those people as the bosses who supported and enabled me through my journey. And I'm very sure that even if one of them was missing out of my life, I wouldn't be where I am. All of them played a very significant role. But if I was genuinely going out to find a mentor, if this is what I really wanted to do, it's not about step one is not about looking what I need from mentor. I think the step one should be what I need to improve myself. What are my shortcomings? Where am I falling all the time? Like, there could be, because the technical skills can be learned. I can go online and I can learn, and then it's whatever I do, whether I'm an accountant, I can learn accounting skills, technology skills, or whatever I do. The softer skills is what I generally go to the mentor for. And no one can help me unless I understand what my shortcoming is. Like, where do I fail? I really need to start to reflect. and see the pattern. The scenarios may be different every time, but the pattern will be very common. I'm not able to contribute because I feel people don't listen to me. I feel that that I've got far more knowledge than everyone else, and people with the lesser knowledge start to get listened, or it could be anything like. But it has to be something that is going on in my head. Once I know that, I think the finding the mentor will become much easier. I'll start to then like. That's where I think LinkedIn comes in very handy. I can go onto the LinkedIn, start to find few people, and this one really good thing I find about this culture too, that where people are very supportive. If I go to some leaders, they're generally, generally, if they have some time, they'll be very happy to mentor me. And if I can tell them that this is the specific area where I'm wanting to improve, I actually believe most of the leaders, either they will say, yes, I'm happy to help, or they will guide me in the right direction that, okay, I don't have time, but here is the Mr. X or Miss Y or whoever who can come and help you in this space. So they will actually do that. But I need to be very open and honest again that this is the issue I need to solve. Now help me. And I don't think there'll be any lack of that opportunity, because the moment I've thought to improve, I don't think this nature will or will not support me. Automatically, I will start to find the people that are going to be willing to support me.
You talked about your turban and beard and going into workplace. What kind of questions do you keep getting when you go into your workplace, when you're working with all those varied teams?
I think maybe recently, maybe I haven't had any questions. Maybe it's because I've been here for 15 years now, and generally there is far more awareness about Sikhs now as compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago. But generally the questions are very, very simple. Like they are all about why do I have beard? And with the beard, most of the people are confused. They don't know that it's actually a long beard, and I tie it. It's only when I tell them, and I work with them for some time, I show them my photos of like having an open beard, and they get very surprised. So there's less question about the beard itself, because they feel like it's just only this much, which a lot of the Australian or non-Sikh people will also have the beard like this, but obviously they don't have a uncut beard. We have the uncut, but once they know it, they will ask questions about it too. Generally, questions are about the turban. Why do we have turban? And then it will lead into the whole aspects of the Sikh culture and unshorn hair and the sort of belief system we carry. But they're generally about that physical look of why we look different.
You've quoted many times during our conversation six scriptures. How much or how your Sikhi values contribute or guide you when you are working in a workplace or in your professional career?
I would say that there is everything I do, I try my best that I'm guided by the Sikh values in a way that they are, because all the Sikh values are all about, when I look at generally the values of Australian culture, personal excellence, honesty, looking into respect, think about courage, think about how I can do the best for the organization in the honest way. That's what I see what organizations are wanting to do, and that's what the Sikh culture is always telling me to do too. So that's where I try my best, that I'm constantly learning from this Sikh scripture, what we call as the Guru Granth Sahib, that how can I keep reflecting on where I can improve, how I can be a better human than yesterday. And I've never come across this in anything within the organizations or even in the Australian culture or in the Australian law that doesn't want me to improve. As far as I'm following those values, and that's what my culture is also about. So that's where I've always tried my best, that as I'm learning the Australian culture, I'm also learning my own culture and trying to make decisions from my cultural background, but keeping in mind the limitations or the constraints that we have got in the organization. The organization is also working with some constraints and limitations, but those limitations are not asking me to compromise on my values. So those constraints are only guiding me to make a decision, but the decision is still coming from a very highly ethical framework.
So if a migrant who has just come in to Australia comes to you and asks for advice, he is qualified, he is ambitious, he wants to get ahead, and that's why he's here. What's your advice to them? How will you tell them what to do, what not to do from your all learnings from across these years?
I think one thing I've said to many people is that be passionate about what you do. If you're passionate about what you do, I've never come across as a single, not even a single migrant who wanted to do something and they haven't been able to do that thing. It's only when the passion starts to fade off, then I see them doing some other jobs and the things that they didn't want to do. But I've come across many people. I've known one lady, like she was so passionate about coding. She came to me 4 years ago and she was like so passionate. Like she had a lot of experience from India. She had worked with multinational organizations. She had got experience from US and all those things. And she was like, "Oh, can you help me to find the job?" I said, "No, I can't. I think your CV speaks too much. You just need to go and apply. Just go and apply." And she's like, "Oh, I'm not finding the job." I'm like, "How many days have you spent finding a job?" She said, "2." "Oh, it's only 48 hours. And I genuinely had a bet with her. I said, "Within 3 to 4 weeks, we will be having a totally different conversation." And she said, "What will be that conversation?" I said, "The conversation is going to be, you will have 3 to 4 offers here in Perth, and you will be asking me that which offer should I expect or accept." And that's exactly what happened with her. In 3 weeks, she had the offer from a WA state government just as a new migrant. Obviously, they couldn't offer her the permanent role, but they offered her the contract and with the assurance that if she converted her visa into the permanent residency, she will get the role permanent, and she's now working there as a permanent thing. She had the offer from one of the global companies in Perth. So she had all those things. So if you're passionate, don't lose your heart. This country is just amazing. There is so much of work. We do need skilled people. We need genuine skilled people. The people who know what they're doing. And this country is very amazing in terms of helping you to learn, but they will do a lot to enable you. And I've known, like, even recently, one of my friends has got a job in one of the universities, and he was very passionate about that domain, but he didn't have a lot of knowledge. He had some of it. I said, just don't worry, apply for it, and be honest with them that this is what you know, but you're passionate, and you'll be very much, you will be working hard to do what you can do in this role. And he got the job 2 months ago, and he's now so happy, and he's doing his best, and he's enjoying it. He keeps calling me and telling me that how amazing this job is and how people are helping him to learn and do his best. So I think just be passionate about it. That's all it is. Don't lose your heart.
And what would be your advice to someone who's actually looking to get into or who wants to work in data and analytics, which is your field specifically?
What's the same? I think I would have said this in the one of the other podcast a few weeks ago. One, obviously you need to be passionate about it, but when it comes to the data and all these things, start to understand that data is different to technology. And data is not tech. Data is data that is helping people to make decisions. So start to learn about the business too. That why do people use data? What does it help in? Start to learn that business language in terms of, this is where you can start to make more effective decisions, which we are doing in our life too. I'm making so many decisions from the data on day-to-day basis. Like, even if I've got some challenge with my health, I will go and do the test, and there will be a report. What is a report? It's actually all the data. And then me and doctor sit together and say, that's what the issue is. Here's the decision. Here are a few options for the decision. You can change your diet. You can change your exercise plan. You can do this. So that's exactly what the data is all about. It's now, I'm not interested in the X-ray machine as a technology, not in the ultrasound as a technology. That was a way to get to the data and to the decision. So that's what we really need to start to become more passionate about, because that's what is going to help you to stay in this journey for much longer. This is a much more exciting field of where we start to understand the application of it. But if you're not understanding the application, this field will start to become very boring for you very soon. So that's all I can say.
In your journey in Australia and in your professional journey, you have seen organizations, different organizations, consultancies, universities, technologies change, way of working change, a lot of things change. What advice will you give to someone, Harpreet, who came to Australia, to Melbourne, that long ago, today? What's the advice to that young Harpreet?
Overthink. Do what you are supposed to do at that point in time. Just make best of this time. This is it. I'm here to make best of my time. I've actually, and especially coming here as a migrant, I've actually compromised and sacrificed so much. I've actually compromised on my family time in India. I've actually compromised and sacrificed the parental guidance that I would have got by living there. My time with my brother, my relationships, my broader family. For example, for me, I'm the only one out of my whole extended family who is actually here in Australia. Just one single person, which is a lot of compromise on a lot of things. Okay. So what do I need to do? I need to make best of where I am now. I need to do the best thing in every point in time. Whatever I've got, I need to keep improving. I need to keep improving my skills. I need to make best use of time. Yes, I need to have entertainment. I need to have fun. But when you do that best too. Don't compromise on that too. Do your best to have whatever you want to do, whatever hobbies you have, whatever you enjoy, do that professionally too. I always say that your volunteer work, your hobby should be even better than the professional work. When people look at your volunteer work, they should say, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So whatever you do, make best of your time. Everything, doesn't matter what profession you are in, whatever you're doing, it's the attitude. If I'm doing those things in a very professional way, I'm investing into myself. Every 1 minute is investment into myself. If I can keep doing that, don't worry about what comes next. As we say, do your best and let God do the rest. And I think that's what makes this journey very amazing, or at least it made the journey amazing for me, that I didn't care of what is going to happen in future, what it is going to bring to me. All I can do is focus on this moment and try to do best in this moment. And when the journey unfolds by itself, I think that's the most amazing part of it. That journey is always far more than what I can anticipate.
So, with that advice, when you close your laptop in the evening, when the work is finished, who is Harpreet outside of this professional life?
Harpreet is Harpreet. That's all I can say. But yes, it's the attitude of that Harpreet shouldn't change, whether I'm at home or the other. There's a lot of things that I do out of my work. But again, the way I look at it is there's 24 hours and I'm always working. That's it. It's a work. Yes, there's a work that gets me paid, makes my bills paid and everything. But yes, then there are a lot of things that I do as my social thing. I've got a family, two beautiful daughters, and then we've got a family we spend a lot of time as a family. And then there are a lot of things that I will do as a community that keeps me busy during the weekends and even during the weekdays, even in the evening. There are a lot of things that I enjoy doing. Again, it's all part of my learning. The more I work with the community, I feel that helps me to learn from a lot of people in the community. I'm dealing with a lot of diverse people in that sense. The more I understand what they're going through and more I try to be part of their journey, I actually feel that it's helping me to learn and grow as part of that.
Leadership, you are in a leadership position, and leadership can be very lonely. You can't share a lot of things at your workplace. So, when you close your laptop, how do you unwind? How do you take out that high stress environment in which you are and then unwind and then also re energize for tomorrow?
Very interesting. I think we can have a whole podcast on leadership from the Sikh culture's point of view. In Sikh culture, we don't believe we are the leaders. We believe as the concept of servant leaders. And we don't believe in the concept of that we are lonely. There is the life within me all the time. That life is not going anywhere. Whether I just by switching off the laptop, the life within me doesn't go anywhere. That's a guidance that is coming from inside. So that's what I try to follow. Again, the concept's very hard to follow because as a human, I keep making mistakes. But yes, the leadership becomes lonely if I feel it is a lonely thing. If I'm full of life, there's amazing life within me. It's not this life is not based upon the electricity as an energy like a laptop. It switches on and switches off. This energy. If I'm focused on that, I can keep learning so much from within me itself. But even apart from that, when my office work finishes, that's the office work that finishes. My attitude to learn, to contribute, to be part of the society shouldn't finish. In that sense, then there is no loneliness. There is no concept of being by yourself as alone. And if you are, it's not boring. It's very interesting. It's very interesting when you can sit with yourself. I think most of the people in today's world, this is what we lack, is that we don't sit with ourselves. And if we are getting the time, we can sit with ourselves. I think that's what makes me learn so much, because that's a time when I can reflect. I can understand what have I done, what more or better I could have done. So in that sense, yes, the leadership to me is the servant leadership. There is someone who is guiding me. There's someone who is enabling me, and I'm just trying to do my best by following that ethical advice. And two, I never feel I'm lonely. There's someone within me, which is what I call as life.
So you talked about your professional life, your social life, you're doing a lot of things with the community. What one change that would you like to bring about both in the professional sphere, in the Australian workplace, and in the social life in Australia, if you can?
Anything I can see is that I would be changing myself and becoming better. That's all I can say. That the learnings I'm having, I can share with the kids. That one, obviously, it helps me to learn and improve. Two, I think all these 20-25 years that has taken me to learn, if I can keep sharing with the community, keep sharing with the family and friends and everyone, I think this is going to just keep bringing that positive change. They don't need to spend 25 years to learn what I learned in 25 years in the Australian culture. And I can look back and see, if I had the same attitude that I had 25 years ago and didn't change, I will be a massive failure. So that's all I can, I'm trying to improvise myself all the time. But that's the reason why I keep doing all this community work too, because I think somewhere, if I can share, it may help someone, but I'm also helping myself by doing all the community work, because they're also teaching me so many different things.
Okay, here are some small, short questions I'll ask for your insight. If it's data or intuition, when they conflict, who do you trust?
Intuition is always going to be, because the decision that data can take is the data will take. But that's why we have leaders. If data can take all the decisions, then we won't have leaders. The leaders are the ones who are looking at the data, but then making decisions on the intuition of what. But otherwise, it's the machine who can take even the most strategic decision. The data tells the story, but doesn't give the decision.
What's the most overused buzzword in data right now?
The data itself. I don't know. People use the word, but they don't know what it means and how they can use it.
One book apart from your data playbook that every aspiring data professional should read.
There's the guru of the data warehousing called Raf Kimball. He has got few books on the basics of data and all that stuff. That's what I keep recommending to a lot of people, that they should read on how to model and how to design the data. It's quite good.
You've been in Perth, Melbourne, and Canberra. If you had to come to Australia today from India, where would you settle?
Canberra.
If you weren't in data, if you were not working in data, what would you be doing today?
Maybe I will be with community. That's what I would be doing. Be with them, and I think that's what I enjoy. Being with the people and constantly keep learning from the community.
And on that note, what's one thing that all Australians should know about Sikhi?
Basic, I believe everyone should know, is the word Sikh means a learner. And we are the ones who are always learning, progressing, and willing to learn all the time. As far as people know that, that's good enough.
On that note, I'd like to thank you for your time. I've learned a lot, and I hope many others will learn. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Nirmal. Thanks for having me. Thank you.